Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and this is part 8 of our top 100 favorite board games of all time, and this time we are looking at the 20s.
It's interesting how much lists like this can really change. In the past few weeks, we picked up some really great games that I think definitely would have made my list if I had written it now.
Yeah, this is really a snapshot of our favorite games as of like August 10th or something. Although this top, we're in like the nitty gritty now. These ones would not have changed.
Yes, this is true.
And we should get rolling with it. So who started last time?
I started last time, so it's over to you to kick things off this time.
All right, let's kick things off. My number 30 is Fields of Arle, and I am a fan of quite a few Uwe Rosenberg games, but this is one of my absolute favorites. And the great thing about this one, it's 2-player specific, and it is kind of like a farming sandbox game, almost. Like there are so many things that you can do, but then at the same time, it does hold your hand enough. Like I think we learned it pretty quickly, and then we've never looked at the rule book again, which is cool for a game where you can do so many things.
Yeah, that's true. We've kind of just learned by doing of, I think I can do this and build this up and then try this. Ooh, that worked really well.
Yeah, there's just so many cool combos in it, and it is nice, and I think we've said this before, but it is great that this has less of a tricky feeding economy that so many of his games have. So it's like it's lighter in some ways, but then it's also not lighter because there's still so much you can do. But highly recommended for 2 players. And that was my number 30.
My number 30 is Underwater City. So this is Vladimir Suchy, and it's a great game where you're trying to build an underwater city. It's a worker placement game where you put out your workers to collect your resources or to trade in those resources to make your domes or your tunnels that you need. And the great thing with this one is with the cards that you're playing, if it matches your action space, you get to do the action of the card as well. So it's really challenging to try and maximize that and think, well, I've only got green cards, but I don't want to use any of those action spaces. Mm-hmm. And it works really well at 2 players. So many times when we play, it's really tight. And I think, oh, you just went to that one spot that I was going to go to.
Yeah, it's definitely... I have this a lot, actually, with games that a lot of other folks would say, oh, no, it's 3 or 4, where I just think, I want to maximize my playing time, and because it's so thinky, I don't really want to wait for 3 other people's turns. I'm pretty happy just to wait for one other person's turn and then go, and just the back and forth of it.
Yeah, it can cause a lot of AP. You can only keep 3 cards, so thinking which one you get rid of, it can take a while. Yeah. But it is great, and that's my number 30.
29.
My number 29 is a quite a bit lighter game. This is Railroad Inc. And Railroad Inc. it's a roll and write game, and it's a pretty simple game, but it is super addictive. And I could definitely attest to that because I've been playing this on Board Game Arena like crazy. I bet I've played this game 100 times this year, including online plays, and that's because it's so fast. Like you can play a game in 10 minutes at the most. It's always a fun puzzle, and it's just you're rolling dice, and those dice have roads and train tracks on them, and then you're connecting up your route on your map, and that's basically what there is to it. But just within that, there's so much you can do, and then we got the lakes and the rivers expansion, and then the green box, lush green or whatever, which adds like a ton more challenge, and actually makes it's not heavy, but like heavier for sure.
Yeah, we like it enough to justify having those 2 different copies for it. And I really like the trees that come with the lush green, and you get to add the greenery to it, and that just adds another scoring option.
This is one I play so much that it had to be in my top 30. So that is my 29.
My number 29 is one of my favorite filler games, and this is Splendor. So in Splendor, you have 2 options on your turn. You can either get your chips or trade in your chips for your cards. It's set collecting, so once you have one card of a particular color, it makes it cheaper to get that card as well and to build up with that. It's really quick back and forth of who's taking what, and then if somebody takes your card, having to go for a different one, and that moment of reveal of, oh, I have exactly what I need for getting that new card. This probably would have made really high on our top 10 small box games if it had a small box. Yeah. So the biggest thing with this one is the box is way too big. You could get it in like a fifth of the size.
I'd say it's probably, without exaggerating, a 20th of the size is how much you actually need compared to the box. So yeah, the box drives me crazy.
Yeah, so it's a great game in an oversized box. If you can get over that, I recommend it. And that's my number 29.
28.
My number 28 is The Isle of Cats. And tile placement is one of my absolute favorite mechanisms of anything. And this is one of my favorite tile placement games. And it's great because it kind of adds this extra layer to it. Because it's got the tile placement of the cats. And the cats look awesome. And the boats look awesome. And the whole idea of you've got to save the cats from the evil pirate who's going to burn their island is great. But then it also has the card drafting, and the card drafting does so much because it's getting you cats, it's getting you fish to feed cats, it's getting you basically points for the end of the game. It's cards called lessons. I have no idea why they're called that. And they're kind of like, if you have this many cats, or if your cats are in these places, or like if this, then you get points at the end of the game. So you're kind of always adapting during the game, and it also just has the fun of Tetrising up your boat with cats.
And the light colored cats like being with the same color, and so it's really great if you can get a really big family. You can get a lot of points, but only so many cats come out each turn. So It is kind of looking for that and seeing if the right color comes up and if you can fit it on.
And it's UK based, and it's great to have local game designers. So that is my number 28.
My number 28 is Kanban. And the premise of Kanban is to have the most optimized running factory. It's all about efficiency. And for Kanban, you have a car factory, but it's a Vitel Lacerda. So all of the actions are connected. In order to go to a certain space, you have to have gone to another space to get parts or another space to get the design. So you really have to try and plan ahead. But the whole system works really well. It was another one of those that seemed like a lot when we went to learn it. I think the rule book even says, sit down with a cup of tea and take your time for it. But once we played it, we haven't had to really look at the rules again because it all made sense.
Yeah, for me, this is like the simplest. It's not a light game by any means, but for Lacerda games, this is the one that clicks best with me. And it feels so smooth, like the clockwork in it. And he's always got that clockwork. But this one, it really works for me. And I don't like the theme at all. I have no interest in cars or car factories or optimizing to have the best factory. But the mechanics are so good that, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, the mechanics do work really well with the scoring that happens with two different parts, and then the end game that might kind of come a bit surprisingly. And that's my number 28.
27.
My number 27 it's quite a bit lighter than your last one. This is Draftosaurus. And Draftosaurus is exactly what the name says. It's drafting dinosaurs. And I love drafting, and I love dinosaurs so much. We just watched a movie where the kid was calling people to be like, can I talk to you about dinosaurs? And Jess was like, if he called you, he would be talking all day. Mm-hmm. And it's true. I am so sold on this theme. But the game is really fun, and it's almost like a roll and write without rolling or writing. You're reaching into the bag. Each round, you're pulling out a handful of dinosaurs, and then back and forth drafting them, putting them out on your board, building your little like Jurassic Park. Although in this Jurassic Park, no one gets eaten. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's like 8 minutes to play. So you play a whole bunch in a row and you don't get too worried about how it's going. And I could play this game all afternoon.
It works really well for two players as well because you can see the other person's part. So you know what they're looking for. So there's definitely times when you're able to take what they want or discard what they want on purpose to try and thwart them a little bit.
And it actually has a really good two-player. It's rare that there's a drafting game that will work with two players, but this, because it's a slightly different version with the two players, but it works really well. It's just a simple, like, you throw away a dinosaur each time. But that's almost better. It's like hate undrafting, where you're just, I know you want this, so nope. And then here's the ones you get. It's great. I can't recommend this highly enough. And especially with the expansions too. But that is my 27.
My number 27 is Tidal Blades, Part 1, Heroes of the Reef, to be specific. And it has this really great look to it. I think that's what sold us when we went into our local game store. And we're like, oh, this looks fantastic. It's a worker placement game, and in this one, you are trying to prove yourself. You live on this island that's constantly getting attacked by monsters. And so you want to be a champion, so you can become official member of the monster fighting squad or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. So you have to place your worker and compete these challenges. And whilst you do this, you're increasing your skill levels, which give you bonuses, and you're trying to impress the judges as well, and then get better at it, and even go out and practice fighting some of the monsters. I don't know if you're practicing or if you're actually doing them. I
think you're actually fighting.
Yeah.
I think the monsters are breaking through the barrier, and you're like a young... It's like Pokemon. They're sending you 11-year-olds out to do stuff. Yeah.
But it works great, and there's a little bit of asymmetry too, which we love because all the different characters have just little differences in how they start off and the cards they get too.
Yeah, no, I love Tidal Blades Part 1, Heroes of the Reef. And it looks really nice, and it's got a really nice theme to it, and just the colors that they chose, there's just something very pleasing and like islandy about everything.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Part 2 holds.
Yeah.
And so that's my number 27.
26.
My number 26 is probably the heaviest co-op game that we own, and that is Spirit Island. And Spirit Island, actually, we did another video on this too, and we talk about this a bit in that video, but we almost got rid of this one. We played it a few times, and we were just like, we couldn't connect to it. And then we got it. And I think the tricky is that it's so hard out of the gate. Like, it's kind of built that you're failing for the first few turns. And then you got to turn it around and like make the comeback and build up out of that failure. And it's a bit tough to get your head around that and be okay with like just sucking at the game for like the first 5 turns before you start to actually push out the invaders. But it's such a cool game, and it has such a cool like decolonization theme of you're trying to get rid of the colonizers, and you're actually the spirits in the island. The spirits play so different. We've got all the expansions now.
There's a lot of replayability because all the spirits play differently and very, very asymmetric, like you said, which is fantastic. We really like that. But then there's all these different levels you can introduce in terms of the invaders and how hard you want them. So we're still at a pretty easy level for that. But the more we dive into this, the more we can kind of ramp that up a bit.
Yeah, there's the invaders, there's other fear cards, there's other stuff that came in the expansions as well that you can add to it. And yeah, there's a lot that you can build. We're on like level 2 of 107, I feel like, in like the difficulty spectrum. But I look forward to playing a lot more of it, and that is my number 26.
My number 26 is Flamme Rouge. Flamme Rouge is a pretty light game, and you are bicyclists, and so you have 2 of them, a sprinter and a rouleur, and you're using them to go along these tracks, and then the tracks can be differently made as well. And for this one, you're picking up your cards, and then you're using your cards to dictate how far they move. And depending on the course of the race, sometimes you might have a hill, or you might have a space where it's only one, so you might be able to block other people. But the decision of everyone plays their cards and then you reveal them and you move everybody forward, it works really well. And we got the expansion so that we could play at 2-player, because racing games can sometimes be a bit tricky with 2. And that expansion works great to throw those AI in and put a bit of a spanner in the works.
Yeah, I love this. And I love that you specified bicyclists, not to confuse them with other kinds of cyclists.
Oh, yeah.
There will be no tricyclists in this game. But it's so simple, and it's really like a game of inches.
Yeah.
Because your cards get you exactly like the length of the track, I think, like plus 1 or 2. So you've got to use like the drafting and the hills and everything just right. Where it's a simple system that just needs to be simple.
Yeah, and we've done the app too, where we've done back-to-back races to keep track of it as though we're doing a really long competition and seeing who's the winner overall, and that's been really fun as well.
Yeah, the app adds like a whole tour dynamic to it.
Yeah, and so that's my number 26.
25.
My number 25 is Near and Far. Near and Far it's beautiful looking. It's Ryan Lockett does the art and the design, which is pretty rare, and the writing. And one of the great things actually about it is that the writing doesn't suck. So many games that have kind of a campaign or a story element, I end up just skipping through the writing, if anything. But this one, the writing's actually engaging, the stories are interesting, and it's cool because there's so many modes. You can play co-op, you can play campaign, you can play one-off, you can play like a different kind of campaign. And the different campaigns all have different kinds of stories. So there's like a campaign for the game, then there's also ones for each character. But then the game itself is interesting. It feels like an adventure.
Yeah, it really does have that feeling to it. And we got the Amber Mines expansion, so that added the co-op option, which was really great to have for that because I love co-op. And it just added a few little bits to the main board too, which I really like. So if you really like Near and Far, I do recommend the expansion too.
And that is my number 25.
My number 25 also looks really good, and that's Tang Garden. In Tang Garden, you start with basically a blank board and it's tile placement, and you're building out this lovely looking garden. So you're picking the different tiles to put out, whether it's mountain or grass or water, different decorations, and the trees on it look fantastic. And sometimes you put out these landscape tiles because the different characters like looking at different things. I just really enjoy playing this. There's something kind of calm about it as you make your choices, even though sometimes it's a tough choice to make about which one to go with and how to make sure you put out the right tile to get you to go up tracks, but you're not giving your opponent an opportunity to score off that as well.
Yeah, it's it's meant to be building kind of a Zen garden, and so it definitely does have that kind of feel. And I like tile placement games, and I like tile placement games that just have like a little extra. And this does have that production, but I think the production, I don't know, it feels necessary in the game. I know this game's got a bit of flack from like being overproduced, but I don't know. I would argue that like having the actual little gazebos and the little bridges and everything really adds to it. And it's just when you have the garden, like that's kind of the selling point.
Yeah, exactly. Every time I play this, I really enjoy it, and that's my number 25.
24.
My number 24 is a real underrated gem. This is Prodigal's Club. This is just a terrific game. And the idea of the game is that you're this like rich person who wants to lose everything. You're in like a competition to lose everything. So you're trying to lose all your friends, you're trying to lose all your political power, you're trying to lose all your money. And the cool thing is you usually only use 2 of those 3. And whichever 2 you use, the gameplay is totally different. So it's almost like having 3 games in one because of the different like combinations. And then you can also play with all 3 if you got some time and you feel like going crazy, but it does feel a little heavy. And it's just a really good like head to head. And this is another one that I think would probably play great at 3 or 4, but plays really well with 2 because you've got other sides of the boards specifically for 2 players. And there really is like a race for spaces, a race for cards, and a race to get rid of everything.
Yeah, I always find this one, the last turn is always a bit tense as well, because whoever goes first, you get a sense of what their score is. And so you have to try and see if you can get both of your ones that you're working on lower than that score that they got. So it's always so close as well.
Yeah, there's a spot on it where you can choose where you go in the order, and it's kind of fitting for the game that like later in the game you want to go last because you want to be able to have that last shot to just pip them to the post, as they say. But that is my 24.
My number 24 is Nemesis. In Nemesis, you are fighting aliens. It's mostly cooperative. You are on a ship and exploring rooms. And every time you play, it's different because the rooms get laid out in a different manner. And as you explore, you might have little aliens that you can kind of kick and get rid of, or really big, scary aliens that you might have to run away from or are really hard to tackle. And I love the fact that it's mostly cooperative. Sometimes it's semi-co-op where you're both trying to do the same thing, but maybe you want to be the only one to survive, so you might not quite rush to the other person's aid. But we generally play cooperatively. But the production quality looks great. It really feels like a challenge. It's hard to win. When you're in it, you're like, oh gosh, there is this alien. It's super scary. You're definitely immersed in it.
Yeah, and it is, you can play like totally not cooperative as well if you want, because there's traitor cards, but we do tend to take those out and just play with the co-op cards, which is also possible if you want. And there's kind of levels within that as well. Which is great. I really am interested in checking out the expansions too, because there's like 3 different kinds of aliens now.
Yeah, that would definitely change how you play and the feel of it as well. And so that's my number 24.
23.
My number 23 is Root, and probably my favorite mechanic of all the board games is asymmetry. I love asymmetry. Anything with asymmetry is interesting to me, and Root is so asymmetric, and I think that can be a downside for some folks because it's almost like you're learning like 4 games because it plays so differently, and you kind of have to know what the other person's doing as well. But if you're playing this game with 4 people who all understand how it works and who all understand how it works for everyone else, it's so much fun and it's so engaging. And it helps too that it is cute animals, because it's super mean, but it's got that little bit of cheese on the broccoli that it's like, well, but they're so adorable, so how mean can it be? And yeah, I really enjoy this, and I really like the challenge of using each of the different factions as well, of switching it up every game and of it being like a totally new game every time I play it.
I think that's what really gives it its strength, is not only getting the base game, but getting all of the bits that go with it is really where it shines, because each of them do play so differently. And so the more of those expansions you have and the more you explore that, the more fun it is.
Yeah, this is it's a great, and I'm looking forward to all the new stuff coming out next year too. Like you say, the more the better for this one. But that is my 23.
My number 23 is Maracaibo. In Maracaibo, it takes place in like the 17th century Caribbean, and you have your ships that you're moving along your board. This is by Alexander Pfister, and I think it takes a lot of mechanics from some of his other games and puts it together in a really nice way, because you have your cards that are multi-use, so you might use them to exchange them for goods, or you might pay for them to be able to put them out or use them as assistants. So as your ship moves along, you got to decide how far you're going to go, and then you get to do the action of wherever you stop. And when you stop and do an action, you often get to free up your board space as well. So the longer the game goes, the more choices and things that you can do based on what's available on your board. One of the great things with this one too is it's 4 rounds long, and so someone can really push the game to go super quick by speeding through and going really far, but it means they don't get to do as much. So kind of that trade-off is really interesting.
Yeah, Pfister's like the master of the rondel, because Great Western Trail as well obviously uses that similar mechanic. But this one it's similar in the way, because like you were saying, you kind of add more locations as you put out assistants. So it is similar, but it feels super different, even though it is still that rondel mechanic.
So this is one where the mechanics really carry this game. They're fantastic. And so that's my number 23.
22.
My number 22 is my second Vladimir Suchi game on this list, and it is Pulsar 2849. The dice placement in this and the dice drafting mechanic works really well, because you can always do something with whatever dice you have, and there's so many cool different things to do. You're moving a ship around like the universe and visiting different planets. You're also adding these, I don't know what they're like, chunks of satellite or something that like add bonuses to your ship. You're also trying to do these like different challenges on your own player board, and then you're trying to do challenges on a shared player board, and you're trying to do end game challenges that everyone's competing for. And there's a lot of different ways to score it. It's kind of that point salad, but it's like in a really fun way.
I think one of the things with this is there's so many options that no matter what die you end up with, you can do something and everything feels rewarding. It's really cool to explore with your ship. It's really nice to be able to get that tech thing that you wanted. So whatever you're doing tends to feel really positive, and even if you think you didn't quite get the die that you wanted, you still get to do something successful with it.
But that is my number 22.
My number 22 is Marvel United. In Marvel United, you are working together to try and defeat a bad guy. It's a cooperative game, so that's one of the reasons why I love it. I love co-ops. It's really light. It's really simple. On your turn, you play a card, and there'll be 1 or 2 icons on it, and then you get to do those icons. It could be just moving a space, punching a thing, rescuing someone, whatever it might be. But the system works really well, and part of that is the different villains that you're fighting. Each make you have to do slightly different things, and it's enough to keep it interesting, particularly when we got the Sinister Six expansion. For that one, you're trying to defeat all 6 villains at the same time, which is challenging. It took us a few goes.
It's definitely not, like, it's a simple game mechanically, but it's definitely not always an easy game, especially the Sinister Six, and then a few of them, because you can do all of them at once, and then they're also, each individual one has their own individual kind of boss powers that you can fight, and all of those are different. And I think the villains really carry it. You can really get by with like 4 heroes if you had a whole bunch of villains, because the villains, it's like a whole nother game.
Yeah, this is a simple system that works really well, and that's my number 22.
21.
My number 21, I started with an Uwe Rosenberg game, and I'm ending this chunk of the list with another Uwe Rosenberg game. This is A Feast for Odin. And Feast for Odin is, it's the selling point is the huge board of actions. There's 60 some actions in this game, and a lot of those are levels of actions, of like there's like a 1 strength Viking or a 2 strength Viking. But even with that, they do different things. And you're Vikings, and you're doing Viking stuff, and you've got ships, and you're pillaging, and you're hunting, and you're visiting other islands. Visiting, that's what Vikings did, right?
Just visiting.
You're going to islands and saying hi to your friends, like Vikings do. And it's interesting because it is a worker placement / tile placement game. And the tile placement part definitely tripped me up at the beginning, because this is a game that at the start I did not hook me at all, because I just found so punishing filling up the board. And then we realized that it's not about filling up the board. It's about resource management. It's about visiting more islands and about building up a system of getting more stuff. And once we got that going and realized that the board's just kind of a simple way to score all of that, we liked it a lot more.
Yeah, it is one you get a lot better the more you play. And for me, the Norwegian expansion made a really big difference for that. Just a few little things that changed that made it up. Again, it just improved a little bits that I wasn't sure about for the first time.
And it's really engaging. Once you get into it, it gets really engaging. But that is my 21.
My number 21 is Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. I love a legacy game. It's really fun to go through a campaign together and open up new things. And this one does it really well. Clank is a competitive game, but because you're trying to accomplish certain tasks, you kind of do a little bit of negotiating in it, I find. So I would say, well, I won't go out of the dungeon just yet if you're able to go and accomplish this task that we need to do before we move on. And then once you do, we just race and try and make sure, see if the other one can get buried or eaten by the dragon. So it works really well, and I love the Clank system. I really like the deck building element to it. And the board itself, by the end of the game, you have a 2-sided board that we use regularly, which again for Legacy can be a bit rare. Sometimes at the end of it, you're just kind of done with it. But this one we can still keep playing.
I can't think of another Legacy game that we played after we were done with, because they often are like, oh, and it's still playable, but it's never true. This is the one time when it's true. And yeah, I really like Clank Legacy, and I'm not even that into the Clank system. I don't know anything about Acquisitions Incorporated except that the wrestler Xavier Woods has got a character on it, but I've never heard the podcast or anything. And still, this one totally grabbed me, and the story again is good. Like the writing's really short, but it's funny and it's fun to find the new things.
Yeah, they do that balance really well of enough story that's written in a humorous way, but without it dragging on. So I do recommend, if you're looking for a good Legacy game, is Clank Legacy, my number 21.
And that is it. That brings us basically to the end of the 20s. Next video, we're counting down from 20 to 11. And I gotta say, when we started this, we were like, we could probably do this in like 3 weeks. 3 months later, we're almost there, but it has been a lot of fun, and only 2 more videos and we get to number 1.
If you've been following along, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All of that stuff really helps. And hopefully we'll see you for the next one.